We got Dr. Umar Johnson calling up next on Inside the Cave.
Download the FireFan app at the App Store on iPhone devices and at the Google Play Store for Android devices. And use the code CAVE, C-A-V-E, to ignite your passion for sports.
Hey, welcome back to Inside the Cave, thecavepodcast.com, and go to Inside the Cave blog under the Cave Spotlight and check out this week's guest, brought to you by 3 Lee Films. Go to 3 Lee Films on your social media or Instagram and get your 1-minute promo videos ready for all your social media needs. All right, last time he was on our show, it was probably the biggest show for Inside the Cave of 2016. He is back in Chicago doing more speeches and everything, and I'm glad that he took time out of his busy schedule to call back to Inside the Cave. Welcome back, Dr. Umar Johnson.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
Yeah, man. You know, one thing I like about you, man, you're so accessible. You know, I ain't gonna say you're easy to get in touch with, but get in contact with, but I like that you have so many options for people who are interested in you, that they can be able to talk with you and find you and stuff like that. So salute to you for that, my brother. Now,
thank you.
Now, my question to you is this. A lot has changed since you were last on here. And a couple episodes ago, I made a statement and said that voters who normally vote Democratic are stupid voters. And the reason why I said they're stupid voters is because they need an emotional connection with a candidate to vote for them, to come out and vote. Bill Clinton played the saxophone on Arsenio Hall. Immediately, people felt connected with him. Barack Obama was the first black president, or first black guy able to run for president. People felt an emotional connection to him. When those two names weren't on the ballot, and each time in the past 20 some odd years, voters did not show up because they're stupid voters, and in my opinion. Whereas people that vote Republican, they vote on principles and policies. So it doesn't matter what their candidate says, they're going to stick to the script and vote on principle and policy, which makes them sort of smarter because at least they know what they're voting for, and they don't let little things get in the way of them making their judgment for whatever their beliefs is, and they vote for it. Which kind of brings me to you. Last time you were on, now the reason why I wanted you on last time is because the stuff you talk about with raising young black boys, that means a lot to me as of being a father of 2. I took that stuff straight to heart. What I wasn't expecting was for you to be not proud of or wasn't a big, or didn't think that President Obama was a good president for the black community. And I think that took part in the Republicans playing the game of suppressing the vote, whereas the black turnout didn't show up for this election. And the ones that did, a lot of them did turn out more for, unbelievably, Donald Trump, which is unbelievable to me. So that my question is to you. To me, you took part in the Republicans' game of voter suppression. Do you agree with my statement on that?
Nah, I totally disagree.
Okay.
And I would say, first of all, when you're dealing with policy towards black people, it doesn't matter if they're Democratic or Republican. Neither party has a program to improve the quality of life of black people. The black policy is consistent across political party. It doesn't matter if it's Democrat, Republican, Green Party, Liberty Party. It does not matter. There is no agenda to help black people, period, whether you're Democratic or Republican. As far as Republican voter suppression, I don't think the Republicans had to do anything to keep black people from voting. A lot of black people towards the end of the Obama administration began to see that Barack Obama was nothing but smoke and mirrors. And a lot of black people put a lot of faith in Barack Obama, and they got nothing in return for it. And I think the Democratic Party underestimated the disappointment that black America felt for President Barack Obama. And that failure to turn out to the polls was a reflection of black people feeling that, once again, as you said, their emotions and their interests and their best, the best interests of black folks, as well as their vote, was taken for granted. So that backlash that manifested itself as a failure of black people to show up in significant numbers for Hillary Clinton was the result of the fact that Barack Obama didn't do anything for black folks. Republicans had nothing to do with it. On top of that, I think some of it had to do with the fact that Bill Clinton's crime bill during the presidential run, former President Bill Clinton had admitted that his crime bill helped to create the current wave of mass incarceration against black males. Him admitting that, he thought he was helping his wife by coming honest about the role he played in the mass incarceration system, but he did not help her by being honest. He hurt her, because by him saying that, it basically reaffirmed what black folks already knew, and that was that Bill Clinton also took their vote and their emotions for granted. So I don't think the Republicans had anything to do with it. Barack Obama and Bill Clinton did enough on their own to keep black people from coming out to vote for Hillary.
Okay, I got to get a part two in, then I'm going to pass the mic. I disagree, because for me, for people to be so emotionally attached and disappointed, not every black America, not all of America is what Donald paints us as. And I gotta be honest, my life gradually changed from 2008 to now under President Obama. I didn't feel the same hurt.
How many black people? But that's you. Remember, when we're talking about the conditions,
I can talk about a lot of black people that I know that succeeded under President Obama. I can talk about a lot of people who got raises under Barack Obama.
You can talk about a lot of people, but as a people, as a population, the unemployment rate of black people swelled under Barack Obama, and it was higher under Obama than it was under George Bush. So although you could point to some black folks who can buy houses, I could point to many more black folks who probably couldn't even afford to buy a rental property just to house their children in. So we're going to have to take a look at the numbers and the statistics there.
I think that those people were going to,
black folks who do okay.
I think that those people were going to be that way regardless, though. I think most of those people were going to be that way regardless. I can't blame all that on Obama. I just can't say that, because I think there's
they're going to be that way regardless because of what? They're going to be that way regardless because of what?
There's jobs out there. I just don't want to hear that there's no jobs out there and that they couldn't get out there and
So basically what you're saying, there's enough jobs to go around for every black person to get one?
If they wanted a job.
Rate of black folk is,
if they wanted a job.
I'm trying to ask a question.
Okay.
Do you believe that the unemployment rate of black folks is due to the fact that you're too lazy to go look for a job?
Partly, yeah. Yeah, I said it, yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we definitely going to disagree on that.
Yeah. All right, go ahead. Go ahead, Doc.
No, I'm good. I would just say I'm going to disagree with that. I mean,
no, I was talking
about like that you're ignoring the reality of systematic bias, discrimination, and systematic inequity that is at the root and foundation of this country. Black people are systematically kept from accessing opportunity, and we can see the disparities in every major aspect of American life, whether you're looking at criminal justice, whether you're looking at employment, whether you're looking at wealth ownership, whether you're looking at access to opportunity. And not only that, most of that information is even being corroborated by the Department of Justice and many research engines that have done research on the great disparities in wealth, opportunity, and employment, as well as justice in the United States. So for anybody to deny that, which is something that has been going on as long as we've been in this country, I find that quite
okay, I agree with that yes, there's a system. Yeah, I agree with all that. But there's also, we got to take responsibility for ourselves too. There's a lot of people that
individual responsibility has nothing to do with systematic discrimination. Individual responsibility has nothing to do with systematic discrimination. Up until 1940, Irish, Italians, and Jews sold drugs. They ran numbers. They ran guns. They operated gangs. They broke the law to feed their families because they did not find jobs. In 1940, the United States government systematically gave the Irish the police departments of America, the Italians, the fire departments of America, and the European Jews, the downtown civil service jobs of America. The government gave them an economic stimulus package in the form of mass employment. All black people did was step into the criminal underworld that was formerly occupied by Southern European Jews. If you give black people the same opportunities that you gave to the Southern European immigrants, we would also do better. There is no, and has been no one can show me any systematic program that has ever been implemented in this country to improve the condition of black folks. The only thing they do with us is they give us rights, a civil rights bill, a Voting Rights Act. Barack Obama signed the Emmett Till Act that allows the Department of Justice to go after civil rights abuses against black people. But the problem with his so-called Emmett Till Act is you can't go after any cases that occurred after 1980. So you can't reopen Trayvon. You can't reopen Freddie Gray. The government keeps on giving us rights. We don't need rights. What we need is resources. Give us the opportunity to build the same type of infrastructure in our community that you give everybody else an opportunity to build, and we will be fine. We don't need any more laws. We need loans.
One last question before I pass the mic. You think that our life as Black America will be better under Donald Trump than Hillary Clinton?
I think your life as Black America has progressively. Our lives as Black folks in America, Africans in America, has gotten progressively worse since the assassination of Dr. King. From 1968 to 2018, which will be next year, you're looking at 50 years, the 50-year anniversary of Dr. King's assassination. It has got progressively worse. Systematically and consistently, it has never improved in the past 50 years.
Wow. Okay. Whoever got something next? Big Dog?
Yeah. I want to go back on the comment you made earlier, CB, about saying that Democratic voters are emotionally attached and that they're stupid voters. You don't think that the Republican voters kind of fall in that category also?
Based on this election, I got to say that they're smarter voters than people who typically vote Democrat, in my opinion.
Smarter, or they just voted based on emotions?
I think they're smart.
Because it seems like they don't know what they didn't get what they bargained for. What do you think, Doc?
I would say that rich people, as a rule, and well-educated people, middle class to upper class and elite families and individuals, they vote on principle as a rule. Poor people vote more on emotion. And the reason poor people tend to vote more in emotion, coming from a psychological angle, is because poor people tend to have an external locus of control. And what I mean by that is poor people tend to feel that the only way their lives can get better is if something is done outside of them. They need something from the outside. Government input, divine intervention. Poor people tend to think that their fate is ruled by external factors, whereas rich people tend to believe that their fate is determined by internal factors, i.e. what they choose to do. So with Republicans being consistently a richer population of voters than Democrats are across the board, Republicans tend to be those who have inherited in their generational wealth, whereas Democrats tend to be pull yourself up from your bootstraps types of white folk. You're going to get more emotional connection. I do agree with him to an extent on that point. You're going to get more emotional connection from the Democrat than you would for the Republican, because the Republican is looking at his dollar. He's looking at his dollar, and the Democrat is looking at someone to care about them. So I do see that at play. Again, there's exceptions to the rule, and I think it gets worse with Black people. Whereas you do have some emotionalism amongst white Democrats because you're dealing with working class to poor white folks, and rich white folks are in the minority when you look at the Democratic electorate. But when you look at Black folks, because most of us as a population are more impoverished than white folk, that degree of emotional connection becomes even greater because slavery put within us that nothing can change unless someone outside of us does it for us.
Dr. Umar, I've heard you speak many times, and one was on an interview about the student loans, the car loans, and mortgage loans, but we can't get business loans. I thought that was a very, very powerful statement. And I find myself really, really looking at economics, kind of like Dr. King did right before he was murdered. Because we can't get those resources from, like you just said, outside factors, how would you go about empowering the community if we can't get those resources? I heard you mention mom and pop shops. Couldn't really tell if you meant that as a negative or a positive. Me being an entrepreneur myself, I find it difficult to extend with other Black businesses because we're on such a minor scale.
Right. Here's the gift and the curse are one and the same when you're dealing with Black economic empowerment. We're not going to get wealth acquisition from white America. Wells Fargo, Chase Manhattan, Bank of America, they will never empower black people financially, because that will work against population control agendas and other things. It will work against white privilege. It will work against the maintenance of the American social order, which has white at the top and black at the bottom. So the banks, which are critical, the banks are critical to economic racial oppression. They cannot put us in a position where we can empower ourselves.
Exactly.
So that means that the black community has to be empowered from within. Now, it only takes $250,000 to start a credit union. You can start a bank with as little as $1 million. Now, when you look at the fact that black America spent $600 million on McDonald's last year, or $2 billion on Air Jordans in 2016, $9 billion in weave and perm, and $4 billion on alcohol and non-liquor. When you look at the fact we purchased 3 times as many Mercedes-Benzes as white America, but white America has 3 times the wealth of black America, we clearly, with our $1 trillion plus spending power, we clearly have the economic ability to be our own economic stimulus package. We can do this without government intervention. That's the gift. The curse is our psychological conditioning. Black people are not interested in investing in the collective. We're only interested about our individual best interests. What keeps us at the bottom of the totem pole when we look at the cultural racial hierarchy in America is that every other culture in America has a cultural commitment to the collective. A cultural commitment to the collective. The Mexicans have it. I have Mexicans who don't live too far from me. There's like 10 of them in a house. They all live in there. And then slowly I'm seeing them build their own businesses. And nobody leaves the home until everyone has their own business. Black people would never go to those extents to build themselves up economically. We can't stand to be around each other. We can't stand to invest in each other. So the problem with us being our own economic stimulus package is nobody want to subjugate their individual agenda for the best interest of the race.
So not to cut you off, Roll, I'll get right back to you. So it sounds like me and you kind of on the same page, that we're kind of saying the same thing in a sense, right, Doc? Because
let me tell you where we differ. Here's the thing, or we might not differ, but just to clarify, although illegal immigrants will come to America and operate in that type of milieu where they're able to build economically off of one another, most other groups in America, especially Europeans, Chinese who have been here, Arabs, they are able to access large amounts of wealth from America's lending institutions. So although they do have that cultural commitment to the collective, they're also able to tap into loans through America's lending institutions from which we have been systematically disenfranchised and denied. So although yes, we can do this, at the same time, it's still not fair that we cannot access capital the same way that everyone else does. See, one of the psychological hang-ups for us is black people still is waiting for America to pay back the debt that is owed to us on behalf of our ancestors. That is a very big psychological hang-up for black folks. This thing where we've worked, we've labored, we're owed reparations. I'm a big fan of reparations. I'm a supporter of reparations. I know we will get the reparations, but what we fail to understand is that internal reparations always precedes the external. You have to do for self before anyone else does for you. And because black people feel America owes them something, and we take that mindset into everything that we do, we never work hard enough to pull ourselves out of the situation that we are in, because at the back of our mind, we're saying the government owes us. And unfortunately, that goes right back to that external locus of control mindset that we picked up in slavery.
Wow. Powerful. Powerful. And can I piggyback off of that? Off my original question, and you just alluded to that, then how can we convince the local level, on a local level, the black community to support its own interests? I know you're doing your part, but do you have any strategies for any local activists to try to kind of get other black peer groups together, or even just neighborhoods, regular black folk?
I think because, again, we don't have a shared collective consciousness. That's another big problem for us. Every other cultural group has a shared collective consciousness. And by shared collective consciousness, I'm not trying to insinuate that they are utopic. Chinese fight amongst each other, Arabs fight amongst each other, East Indians fight amongst each other, Latinos, Mexicans, Native Americans, Anglo-Saxons, European Jews, they fight amongst each other. But they do have a shared collective consciousness, so that there's certain core ideas and certain core beliefs that they all practice despite the disagreements that they have, which at the end of the day serves as a platform with which they can work with each other. We do not have a shared set of values. Our religious values were all over the place. Culturally, we're all over the place. Politically, we're all over the place. Economically, we're all over the place. So it's hard to organize black folks because you don't have any common denominator. And the one common denominator that you do have, which is the oppression on the negative side and the shared cultural heritage on the other side, that doesn't even serve as a common denominator, because you have too many black people who are trying to claim that they are not black. And you have too many black people who are trying to disqualify the impact and role that the legacy of slavery continues to have in the life of black folks. So it is very difficult to bring together people who actually don't want to be together, wish they were never black in the first place, and who definitely are not looking at investing in one another. Here's what we have to do. We have to find those who do care. You have to go on a search mission, a reconnaissance mission, to find those who have not been destroyed by the psychological Holocaust. We are in the middle of a psychological Holocaust, and I believe we're at the beginning of a 21st century Holocaust. Kill the thought process that keeps black people together, and then ultimately kill the black people.
I know that you've probably seen a lot of stuff that's been going on in Chicago, with all these murderings and things like that. I guess my question is, we got kids out here that's 21, 22 years old as murdering people, and in the process, they hitting babies. So Donald Trump's problem solving to this is to bring in the feds and bring in tanks and things like that. And I think that's only going to make things worse. So I just wanted to hear your views on that. And then I think I was going to try to take that and go back into the economics about that.
Yes, sir. First of all, it's a contradiction for any government to claim that they're bringing in military to protect the lives of some, okay, while they allow their police, which is an extension of the military as a result of the Patriot Act and Homeland Security, to kill other black folks. They're not bringing in the FBI and the National Guard to protect black folks. They're bringing in the FBI and the National Guard to protect white property and to protect white economic interests. That's the only reason why they are in there. It is capitalism times racism. The job of the police and the military in a capitalist society is to protect the economic infrastructure. And the purpose of the police and the military in a racist society is to eliminate the population that is unwanted. So they're coming in to fulfill the agenda of capitalism and racism, protect the economics and the infrastructure and the institutions, and at the same time wipe out black folk. I believe before this is all said and done with Chicago, I believe before it's all said and done with it, I don't know how many years from now we're going to find this out, but I very much believe that it's going to be revealed at some point in time that there was a mercenary army that was hired and employed by either the state government of Illinois or the city government or possibly even the federal government to go in and systematically reduce the population of black folks in Chicago. There's no way you're going to convince me that all of these murders are the result of angry black males. When you have cameras on every major intersection in Chicago, I spend a lot of time in Chicago, there's no way you're going to get away with a murder in that city and it not be recorded. This is being orchestrated by the government. We've seen the Purge 1, we've seen the Purge 2, we've seen the Purge 3. Chicago's Purge 4.
Doctor, and I'll let Joe get right back in. This is where we agree. I want you to think back on something. Now, I'm a huge Obama supporter and everything like that. Well, I mean, there's nothing no one's going to tell me to make me think that Obama wasn't good. Now, but where I do know something went wrong is right when he got elected. These are facts. Chicago was trying to get the Olympics on the south side of Chicago. Now, I grew up in Chicago all my life. The south side was one of the most beautiful parts of Chicago for all the time I grew up. Now it's a war zone. This happened. The timeline is right after Chicago didn't get the Olympics. Now, let me take you back what happened. Mayor Daley was in charge. Mayor Daley asked Oprah, Barack Obama, and Michael Jordan to go down to Brazil, I believe, to speak to get the Olympics in Chicago. Barack Obama just made president. This was like February of 2009, maybe. And he had to go. Michael Jordan told Mayor Daley, nah, I'm cool, I can't make it. But the president of the United States had to go. And Oprah went down there. But Michael Jordan said, nah, I can't make it. He couldn't go up there and fight for Chicago to get the Olympics. We all know that Chicago didn't get the Olympics. And from that point on, because they have invested so much money into the south side of Chicago, they was going to make it the whole Olympic town and everything. And then from that point on, Mayor Daley resigned. Oprah show left Chicago. Michael Jordan was hardly there anyway. Obama was in Washington, D.C. And we saw from that point on the south side of Chicago break down. Now, we do conspiracies on this show all the time. I want to know, do you think that has anything to do with that?
I do. I believe it was a setback for a setup for a comeback. And what I mean by that, when Chicago lost the Olympic bid, I think what happened was they decided to put out a propaganda campaign to encourage the violence, to basically turn Chicago's image into that of nothing but a war-torn city that's being dominated by a bunch of black animals and savages. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to let them tear the city up so we can ultimately buy it back for pennies on a dime and pennies on a dollar, and then finally build Chicago into the type of city that we need it to be, so we can definitely get the Olympics the next time that we go for it.
Wow.
This is all part of the economic agenda and the ultimate plan for Chicago. There's a new Chicago coming, and it doesn't include black folks.
Go ahead, Joe. I didn't want to cut you
I
off.
agree with that 100%, that it don't include black folks, and they moving them out already. I guess the other thing, since we was talking about the economics, and most of the big cities across America, what is dominated by black people, it kind of look like Chicago. So going back to like what Roland was saying and what you were saying, you know, as far as trying to help each other out business wise, it's kind of hard to do when, you know, you don't really have nothing that you own. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I totally agree with that. One thing we know, when crime is high, it's because employment is down. When employment is high, crime tends to go down. And see, with America, the only narrative that we're hearing about black on black violence is that it's the result of poor character, morals, fatherlessness, unmarried poor black mothers, and psychological issues. That's not true. Crime is an economic factor. Crime is an economic factor. Everyone knows that. If every black man in America had a livable wage job through which they were able to take care of their children and take care of their women, the crime rate, we would still have crime, but it would be significantly lower than what it is now. You see, what you're dealing with is pain, you're dealing with disappointment, you're dealing with rage, you're dealing with hurt, and you have so many black folks sitting on top of each other, living on top of each other, and when you have a situation like that, crime occurs. And guess what? Not just with black folks. You see the same thing in the Middle East. You saw the same thing in the 20s and in the 30s with white folks. Whenever poor men are surrounded around each other with nothing else to do, crime is the result. But they try to make it a uniquely black issue, but it's actually a human situation. But they try to paint that narrative because the government wants to do absolutely nothing to change this reality, because in order to reduce crime, you're going to have to employ black males. And that's not something Trump is going to do. Obama did nothing about the employment of black men. Bill Clinton, George Bush, and no one else. Again, the policy for all the presidents, all the parties, when it comes to black folks, to simply suffocate our issues until they hold us down long enough to die.
On one hand, you were saying about the resources not being available, but then on the other hand, you were saying that government can't provide the type of help that we need in our communities.
No, the government could provide the type of help that we need in our communities. The government is not going to provide the type of help that we need in America for black folks to improve the situations. We got to realize something. Our presence in this country was never supposed to occur. The only reason why we're still here is because of an accident in history known as the Civil War, where black men were called upon to save the Union because they were about 10 seconds from losing the entire country to the Confederacy. And after we won that war for the country, because we liberated Abraham Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln didn't liberate us. The Union knew that they could not tell black men to put their rifles down and go back to slavery, because there would have been a second World War, and all of us might possibly be living in the United States of Black America had that continued. So everything must be done to keep black folks off the radar. We are the invisible people. James Baldwin wrote a book talking about the invisible man, how black people exist, but we really don't count. Well, that's exactly what we're in right now. And one of the reasons that it's going to be worse for black people in the Trump administration is the reason Donald Trump really doesn't have to speak to black issues the way any other president previously had to speak to black issues is because we let Barack Obama take the black agenda off the table. He's the first president out of 44 who did not have to deal with issues affecting black folk. And because he was black, we turned a blind eye to it. We let him ignore us while he took everything our ancestors fought for, gave it to gays, Mexicans, white women, long enough for everybody to forget black folks even existed. And so now, with Donald Trump being the first president after Barack Obama, he doesn't have to address black folks at all, because we've already created a precedent where it's okay to ignore black folk because we let Obama do it. And so a lot of this now is just going to be a blackout. One of the reasons they had that Women's March right after Donald Trump got elected was to make sure that the primary civil rights issue in America remains something other than black folks. During the Barack Obama administration, Obama focused on homosexuality as a means of avoiding and ignoring black folks. Donald Trump is going to focus on female issues as a means of avoiding and ignoring black folks. And the next president is going to choose another issue and another issue until there's so few black people around, you're not even worth being mentioned anymore.
Well, okay, I'm going to let Roland get in. I got to ask this. I'm sorry. I got to get this in. As a president of the United States, I hear this a lot from a lot of people, and me and the guy got into it before. How Obama put in black attorney generals. These cases that happened in St. Louis, Freddie Gray's, the Trayvon Martins and stuff like that, I don't even think it would have been even magnified to the extent where we all came together for these issues if Obama wasn't the president. Like, I hear that he hasn't. I just can't. He can't. I don't think that he, as a president, he can just go out there and say, "This is for black people." I just think that's like an alternative world.
I totally agree with you. George Bush didn't have to say this is for white people, but he went out of his way to look out for rich white folks and middle class folks. You don't have to say that this is for a particular race. You just go ahead and do it. Obama didn't even do that. He gave homosexuals 3 federal laws. The last time black people got 3 federal laws was the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. He gave white women the Equal Pay Act. He gave the immigrants 4 federal laws, including 2 executive orders. You didn't get a law. You didn't get a bill. You didn't get an executive order. The only thing you got was ignored. And no black person who cares about the condition of us as a group, not individual privileged black folks, but us as a group, can look at the Obama administration and say that he did anything for black folks. And if someone wants to argue that, they're going to have to tell me what it was. Please name the law. Please name the program that was for black folks.
What about getting all the black people out of prison? What about when he's the first president that I've seen in recent history that didn't pardon rich, successful people that's amongst him, like lawyers and politicians and stuff like that. He went straight into the jails and gave people seconds. Some people had life sentences. And then one guy, as soon as he got out of prison on a life sentence, he went right back in the next week. Like, at some point, we got to hold our...
And why did he go right back in the next... First of all, I looked at a lot of those because they were published online. The people that Barack Obama exonerated. And he exonerated as many white folks as black folks. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, he exonerated more white folks than black folks. That wasn't for black people. That was for criminals. And then when you look at many of those cases, and he did leave out some people, he may have let some people out of their life sentences, but a lot of those cases were for very petty offenses. I saw people who were exonerated for 1 month probation, 2 month probation. A lot of those exonerations wasn't even people in jail. A lot of them was for people who was on probation or parole. So it wasn't like he just went in and took the black folks who had some of the worst sentences and let them out. But here's the biggest issue with that, and this is where black folks, we have a very bad habit of looking at tokenism as some sort of systematic change. We suffer systematic oppression. So if you want to do anything that's going to benefit black people, it must be done systematically. letting a few folks out of jail while the rest are there, and then doing nothing to change the law to prevent black folks from being locked up in the first place, and then creating no meaningful programs for those that you let out, only dictates that they will go back.
I agree.
85% of all black offenders will return to jail within 2 years because there are no opportunities. All Obama did was give us cosmetic surgery. We don't need cosmetic surgery. We need internal political, economic change.
No, I agree. Go ahead, Ro.
I agree 100% with that. I'm sorry.
Dr. Umar, we can go on like this forever. I'm totally agreeing with everything you're saying, but I want to switch gears and I want to give you an opportunity, at least for the last few minutes of the show. I want you to talk about where you're at right now in your plight to get your school or our school started for young boys. And if that's still so far away, what can parents do on a local level? What books can they read? What type of things can they obtain to help them help raise their black boys? And do you agree with homeschooling?
Okay, great question. Number one, I've already set the start date for the first day of school at the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Leadership Academy to be the anniversary of the Nat Turner War and Haitian Revolution in 2018, and that would be August the 21st, which also happens to be my Earth Day. So that is the day that has been set to open up the academy. It is my goal to have purchased an academy or acquired, in case we decide to lease, by this August the 21st. That's the goal. In fact, one of the reasons why I'm actually going to be coming to Chicago on Thursday is because I'm scheduled to look at several school buildings for sale in Chicago on Friday. Now, Chicago was one of my early choices for the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy, but you haven't heard me mention Chicago for the past year or so because it was very difficult to get access to the schools that were available in Chicago because the government is blocking. I was in Detroit a couple of weeks ago, and the government there, the city government, is blocking my access to view the schools that are still in very good condition. And the reason they're blocking my access to certain schools in Chicago and Detroit and Philadelphia and other major cities is because the purpose for shutting down those schools in the first place was to get black people out of the inner city and prepare for the white return. So the last thing you need is Umar Johnson opening up a school for black people in the middle of the city, because that's going to work against our agenda to get rid of them. Be that as it may, we did find some in Chicago, and I'll be looking at some of them on Friday. What parents can do, 3 quick things. Number one, they need to read my book, Psychoacademic Holocaust. They have to read it because it's the only book that teaches black parents how to protect their children legally in the miseducation machine. Okay. If they come out to Saturday's lecture at the Greater New Mount Moriah Church, they can do that. Second thing, we need Chicago's parents and Indianapolis' parents and Detroit parents and Milwaukee's parents and all the black parents of the Midwest to join the National Independent Black Parent Association, which is an organization we started last year to organize black parents to fight against racism in the 7 key areas of special education, school discipline, school policy, school finance, homeschooling, parent advocacy, and social support. So if anyone's interested in joining, they can reach me through the website, drumarjohnson.com. And to answer your question about homeschool, I'm a big supporter of homeschool, but I want to be clear about something. Homeschooling for me is a Band-Aid. It is not a solution. And the reason it is not a solution is because every parent can afford to do it. A solution is something that when it's implemented, it benefits all black children, not just some. We got parents working 2 and 3 jobs. 75% of black mothers are single black mothers, barely above the poverty line. They can't afford to homeschool our children. And to be honest with you, if we can spend $9 billion on weed and $600 million on McDonald's, it makes no sense for our parents to have to shoulder the burden of educating their children on their own when we have a community that can clearly build brick and mortar institutions for their children to learn in.
Every time I hear you say that, Doc, I just feel like me and you really agree with each other that, you know, some of this stuff is on us. That
I think we good. It's just that Obama thing we ain't going to agree on. That's all.
I know our time is running down with you, so I want to give everybody a chance to ask rapid fire questions real quick to you, and you give us, you know, your answer as fast as you can. Or I don't want to, you know, I know you got other things to do. Here's my first one. How do you feel about so-called celebrities meeting with Donald Trump, and would you meet with Donald Trump?
Yes, if Donald Trump would have called me up and say, hey, I want to sit down with you, understand that you're a psychologist and an educator and an organizer in your community. I'd like to hear what you have to say on education and mental health and economic revitalization and systematic racism. I would sit down with him. Why? Because since the beginning of time, people who are in a hunt to acquire power and improve their condition have always met with the representatives of the system that denies them that power. It would be insane for us not to meet with Donald Trump, because you need to be able to say, we made it very clear what we needed to do, and you did not do it. Does it mean he's going to do it? Absolutely not. But you need to be able to tell the world that we made it clear in no uncertain terms what we needed to be done for us. So that way it can never be said, I wanted to help black folks, but none of them would meet with us. So I didn't have a problem with any of them meeting with Donald Trump. My issue was who he chose to meet with. Only in the black community are celebrities our spokespersons. In no other community do they go to celebrities to find out what's going on with members of that community. You don't go to Steve Harvey. Steve Harvey is a multi-millionaire. He don't live in the ghetto. Ray Lewis is a multi-millionaire. He don't live in the ghetto. They use Ray Lewis to be an apologist for the murder of Freddie Gray in Baltimore. What would you meet with him for? Wow. Jim Brown. I had no problem with Jim Brown meeting with Donald Trump, because at this late age of his life, he has always been a stand-up black man who has always been unapologetic. So I'm very confident that Jim Brown could not be used by Donald Trump or anyone else to be an apologist for racism. But with meeting with people like Steve Harvey and Ray Lewis, that just tells me that was more about theater than it was about doing anything significant for black folks.
Wow. Big dog.
Yeah. If you were president, what policies would you put in place, or I guess what policies would you put in place to try to help empower black people? And also, what do you think it's going to take to change the mindset of our own people so we can take that next step forward?
Second question first. I don't have a lot of faith in the current population of black folk in America. I think the 21st century American African is the worst one we've produced on this soil. When you look at the 17th century black man and woman during slavery, you look at the 18th century black man and woman, you look at the 19th century black man and woman. And by the way, the 19th century black man and woman was the most progressive black man and woman we've had on earth since the fall of the great dynasties in Nile Valley, Africa. That 1801 to 1899, that Frederick Douglass, that Harriet Tubman, that Shaka Zulu, that Marcus Garvey, that generation right there, that 100-year period, that century was the greatest we had. And I think we need to study that century, because that's when we got so many of our great minds. But I think we have to focus on the children. I think one of the dysfunctional adaptations that we have created for ourselves is we spend too much time trying to change the thinking of adults. People do not change. The human personality is largely wired by the age of 5, relatively permanent by the age of 12, and ain't likely to change after the age of 25. So why don't we focus on the children and make them what they need to be, as opposed to trying to change these adults? Frederick Douglass said it's better to raise strong boys than to repair broken men. It's better to raise strong boys than to repair broken men. The 3 things I would do if I was president: number 1, black people will have community control of their schools. If they're not approving of the principals or the teachers, they can fire them and replace them. Number 2, all of the taxes that black people make, at least 25% of the black tax base in this country, would be used to build credit unions and banks in every black community. Also, there would be a black bank staffed by black doctors that is overseen by a black medical supervisor in every major city, because hospitals are becoming a dying breed in the black community in many cities. And you guys are in Chicago, you know that you sometimes have to drive 10, 20 minutes to get to the hospital. So they are taking the hospitals out of the black community to facilitate population control. And then I would also see to it that every white Jesus in America is burned. And the last thing that I would do, any black man who is not married to a black woman would have to pay a tax for marrying outside of his race, or for not being married to a black woman at all.
Oh my gosh! Well,
look, I want to say this though. I think this generation has learned how to get money, but what they do with the money after they get it is the problem.
Oh, Doc, we need you back on, man. I know you're busy, but we need another show with you, brother. Joe Dirt, go ahead, man.
No, go ahead, Rose.
Dr. Umar, I would be remiss if I didn't say that your popularity precede you. And although you may have sidestepped a couple landmines, this social media monster has been very attacking. How would you say that you deal with the popularity and the weight of being the figure that you have been, being a psychologist, being trained, and also being a Black man standing up for your race? Although you're not perfect. I'm sorry?
I would say that the people have been my sustaining secret source of energy. Whenever I get down, and it is hard out here dealing with Black folks trying to destroy you every corner you turn, white folks trying to manipulate your failure. But when you get texts and you get emails and you have elders come up to you at your lectures, I was in Newark yesterday and Atlantic City Friday, and just give you a big hug and encourage you to just keep on going. We're behind you. When you get emails saying you changed my life, you saved my life, you helped me save my child, you got to keep going, because if you inspired me, I know you inspired many more. That's the type of stuff that keeps me going, man, because if there was another Umar Johnson, if there was someone else who had that expertise and that commitment when it comes to the miseducation machine, I would have probably bowed out, because, you know, I could use a break from it all. You know, I'm not really one for the camera and the lights and the action. I didn't know that my opinions were considered to be so revolutionary, left or right of center, you know, that it required all of that additional attention, man. But I could give it up. And to be honest, that's probably the one thing people don't know about me the most, that I could walk away from it today or tomorrow. But my obligation and my love for my people commands that I stay there.
That was Dr. Umar Johnson once again coming on Inside the Cave. And one more time, you said if any Black man is with a white woman, what's going to happen?
He's going to have to pay a tax for marrying outside of his race.
Who said that? Who said that? You know, Doctor, before I let you go, that started out as a joke on this show, that we got a talented guy that knows how to make fake Donald Trump tweets. And that was a tweet that we put out as a spoof from Donald Trump. Who would have thought that you kind of agree with our thinking over here?
Wow. I mean, we got to remember something, fellas. All behavior is a consequence of context and consequences. And one of the biggest reasons why we can't get Black folks on the same page, because you can't give out no consequences. Who listens to people who cannot give out consequences if they fail to do what they need them to do? Until the Black community is able to give out consequences and rewards, it works both ways. Consequences for doing what you're not supposed to do, and then we have to honor and reward those who do what we need them to do. Until we come up with a contingency system on both sides of the scale, it's going to be difficult to get Black folks to stand in line.
Appreciate you always coming on, and I got to tell you, man, I'm already thinking about part 3. So
no doubt, anytime.
Okay.
Anytime. That's no problem. Anytime.
Big Dogs Country Rap Tune of the Week. Big Dogs Country Rap Tune of the Week.